Hi, hello, welcome. I'm Penny Dix. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Just to let you know who I am and why I'm going to do this for you, I'm a trained psychotherapist, counsellor, life coach and astrologer. And I think you all know why we're doing this today, because we're all living in isolation, or we are doing the quarantine. So I know a lot of people are going to be struggling with isolation and anxieties that are caused by this. So, hi Susie, see you're watching. That's fantastic. Thank you. One person. So, first of all, I just want to say something briefly about isolation. The problem is with isolation, it means that somehow it makes us aware that we are out of control. And I think if there's one thing our sort of generation, and certainly probably for most of us that have sort of been born since the end of the war, that on the whole, we're used to things kind of going to plan and not being uncertain. So a situation like this with this virus, which is a very unknown quantity, means that we have to learn very quickly to live with uncertainty. Now, what's that about, and how do we cope with it? So how do we respond to this? Okay, so we have what is called a fight-flight response in us. Now, what is a fight-flight response? Okay, so when we were primitive cavemen, we had to have these instincts that would make us react instinctively to a dangerous situation or a perceived threat. So there is a part of the brain which let's say is called the primitive brain, and we have an intellect part of our brain. This is very, very simple. I was actually given these skills about how the brain works from Emma Triplett, who's a very successful and renowned hypnotherapist. She lived in Gozo for a while. She's now back in the UK, and she runs her clinics for hypnotherapy, Old Town Hypnotherapy. So, if you want to follow her as well, I really recommend it, because I learned an awful lot from that lady. Now, with the primitive brain, we probably spend a big percentage of our lives in our primitive brains. Now, what does this mean? We are acting instinctively. We are reacting. It is our behaviours. It is our habits. So a situation like this happens with the coronavirus, and immediately we will go into a fight-flight response, and everybody will respond differently to situations like this. Some of us will manage it quite well, or be dismissive of it, panic terribly, and in many ways it doesn't really matter whether... Hi everyone, I see lots of people are watching. This is fantastic, thank you. It makes me feel not alone in this isolation that we're all in. What happens is, let me give you an example of how automatic our thoughts are, and how often our thoughts can be very negative. So if a great big fierce tiger walks into your room right now, what are you going to do? Well, you're probably going to go freeze, and then you will run away. Now, this is a very kind of well-known process that goes on with thoughts, feelings and actions, because what happens is everything will happen simultaneously. So we take the action, but coming to that point, we've felt the emotion. And if a tiger comes in and is looking like he's going to eat us, then it's threatening, so we feel frightened. So what happens is, the thought that we've had, of course, is that we know tigers eat people or kill people. So what this is about, why I'm giving you this little model, is because we tend to have this automatic thought initially. And what happens when we have this automatic thought is it immediately evokes the reaction, which is fear, in the case of a tiger, or maybe in the case of this coronavirus. And what happens is we instinctively react. And our reaction is to either freeze or run away or whatever it is. Now, if we come back to the coronavirus, we're all going to be responding and reacting in very different ways from this. Some people will, freeze. Some people will run away. Some people will get very active and think, I've got to go out there and do something. Some people will be very dismissive. Now, none of those are wrong and none of those are right. They're just the way we are. They are just the way we kind of respond in these situations. And I want to say something about reaction and response, because those of you out there that have done a little bit about mindfulness will know it's really important when we're kind of being mindful and staying in the present, and if we can be mindful about what's happening to us at the moment with how we react in this situation, what happens is that we tend to react rather than respond. And one of the ways I feel we can cope with anxiety is actually by taking a moment when we have this knee-jerk reaction that we want to run, or we want to do that, or we want to, whatever it is that we want to do, stockpile, toilet rolls, then you need to just stop and think. And this brings us back to the model that Emma Triplett taught me about the primitive brain and the intellectual brain, and how important it is to be aware of when we are in this primitive brain, because when we are caught in this fight-flight response, what happens is we react and we don't respond. Now, if people actually took time out and responded to the situation, they might think, okay, this is happening to us because it's happening to all of us. We're on one ship here, planet Earth, and it's happening for all of us. We would think, so what is the best way for me to look after myself and those that depend on me? And then you would plan. Now, that would be using your intellect. And what has happened, and this is where the anxiety has kicked in and taken over for a lot of people, is that we run into this flight mode or fight. And that is really where it is not helpful to us, because it fires up our anxious thinking and means that we're not really thinking intellectually or clearly, practically, about perhaps what is the best action that one can take. Now, I'm gonna keep this sort of talk today fairly brief. I also know everyone's attention span is not brilliant, and we need to be engaged to make us feel that we want to kind of continue listening. So I thought it would be a good idea to kind of just say a little bit today about anxiety, and then do some regular updates where I will talk about other aspects of anxiety and how we can handle them. And in between these times, it would be very helpful if you let me know what particular aspects you are struggling with, and then we can address these issues. So one thing I do want to say is it's really important to get good quality sleep, and to try not to use artificial means to get that good quality sleep. I know it's very tempting to have the glass of wine or the sleeping pill or whatever it is, but that's not going to give you good quality sleep, and it's not going to enable you to kind of your unconscious to refresh and restore what's been going on in the brain all day with the overthinking. So it's really important to make sure that you find ways to relax and sleep at night. There are a huge amount of really helpful YouTube videos that you can listen to at night, which are to do with hypnotherapy, helping you get into a state of sleep, to just relax you, I can really recommend Emma Triplett's website for that, Old Town Hypnotherapy, because she has some lovely tracks on that, which I've used personally, and they are extremely helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mention a little bit about some of the questions we can ask ourselves when we tend to get into what I call distorted thinking. And I think what happens with situations like this is our thinking gets paranoid, it gets out of control, it becomes unrealistic. And especially when you're living on your own and you're isolated, even when you're with a partner or family, that can be just as isolating in a different way, because it'll bring other things to the surface, and that's something we can look at another time. But I think one of the questions to ask ourselves is, am I jumping to conclusions about what I'm thinking at the moment? Because often, we get all this, we get fed by all the news feeds and the scaremongering, and it doesn't enable us to find our own balance in this, to just think, well, hang on a minute, where am I in this, and what do I really feel about this, and how can I best look after myself? So you can also ask yourself, what alternatives are there to my belief? Or am I asking questions that have no answers? And of course, with this current situation, there are a lot of questions that there are no answers for at the moment. Nobody can actually really say how long it's going on. No government can give assurances on any of the dramatic unfoldings that are happening in the world today, economically, with the environment, with all the things that are on the agenda. Another thing we can tend to do is we assume that our view is the only one possible. It's not. And my view isn't the only one possible. You will all have your own views, and everyone has the right to their own view. It's not right or wrong, it's just different. And we do ask questions that have no answers. We often fret about how things should be instead of dealing with them as they are. Because the way things are at the moment, we've had to kind of like recalibrate ourselves and find a way to deal with this crisis that has changed the whole idea of what we had planned, let alone for this week or this month, but is going to unfold. So be careful with your thinking. Stand back and respond to it. Analyze it. Think, am I predicting the outcome instead of experimenting with it? Because this is also often what we tend to do. So what I'm going to do is I just check my checklist, because I had some more things. No, I think that was it for today. But I just want to read you 4 lines which I think are really lovely from a book by T.S. Eliot called The Four Quartets. And they're 4 lines that I think are, for me, resonate. And I think if we can use this time that we have to go inward and reflect and work with ourselves on an inner level, because we live so much of our lives in the external world, and we are being invited, if you like, to go within and to learn about that and to learn about ourselves and our core selves. So let me leave you with these 4 lines. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will be doing further updates. I may change the time of day depending, because sometimes I find people's anxiety is worse in the morning when they first wake up and they switch the news on, or they go on Facebook and start scrolling. So I may actually do another one in a day or so in the morning, so that it kind of sets you up for the day. But please, if you've liked this, you can personal message me If you need more help than I can give just over this video, then please ask me. I am offering free counselling at the moment, but I can only do that for like 10-minute slots. If you wanted at some point, you know, when at the other end of all of this, a longer kind of session to understand it better, then we can look at that then. I do have a website. It's www.pennydix.com. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming and joining me here today. And please share it, because hopefully, even if just one person gets something that helps them from what I've said today, then that's great. And thank you so much. You're great. Lots of love to you. Stay well. Do as you're told. Bye for now. Bye.